on the subject of the cultural case for the UK to rejoin Creative Europe. From 1984 to 1999, Carol was MEP to London East. In 1996, the European Parliament adopted her report on public service broadcasting in the multi-channel digital age. Post-1999, Carol was involved in the UNESCO Convention on Cultural Diversity of Expression. Carol co-founded the UK Coalition for Cultural Diversity, chaired the European Coalitions for Cultural Diversity, advocated for proportionate remuneration in the age of AI, and was awarded the Beaumarchais Medal for services to authors' rights. Currently, Carol is co-president of London Europe. Carol, we look forward to your talk.
Thank you very much, Bob. Does this sound as if this is actually on?
Yeah.
Yes, good. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today in such heat. I really do appreciate it because I know how heavy it can be for all of us. So it's really lovely to stand here with so many listening. Everything Bob just said that you sometimes get more people. I said, look, for an ex-politician, this gathering today is absolutely fantastic and is such a lovely venue as well. When the UK left the European Union, it didn't merely exit a trading bloc, it severed itself from one of the world's most ambitious cultural partnerships. Creative Europe, the EU's flagship programme, supports the production of film, distribution of film, television, music, publishing, and the performing arts right across the board. This had been a vital channel through which British artists, performers, film and television producers and cultural institutions collaborated with their counterparts, not just across the 27, but across 40 countries. There are 13 associate countries in addition to the membership of 27. We could have negotiated to be number 41. Brexit ended that relationship. The cost has been significant and measurable. As the European movement has recently said, when it took evidence from a wide range of UK arts, culture and audiovisual organisations and put together a report, you can find it online, Creating Culture Together. And I quote from this report, "The benefits of returning to Creative Europe would far outweigh any financial contribution we would make. Participation in the programme and its predecessors from 1990 to 2020 gave British organisations visibility, collaboration opportunities and the ability to lead international projects." The last phase of the programme, 2014 to 2020, Creative Europe supported 376 UK organisations, 609 projects involving UK beneficiaries, and helped to distribute 196 British films across the 40 countries of the programme. The UK received around 111 million in all, supporting hundreds of projects in film, television, performing arts and publishing. The Creative Europe's programme impact, but it goes beyond the creative sectors. In the 40 countries, from Iceland, Norway to Turkey, down to Morocco, many outside the EU that I mentioned, have helped to build mutual understanding, positive narratives between people, supported innovation across the whole of arts, culture and media, and of course the economic case hugely contributed to growth in the creative industries. You could argue that when the UK left Creative Europe, it hurt not just the cultural and creative sectors, but also our societies and our democracies on both sides of the channel, because you simply lost those conversations that had taken place before. Here are some of the examples, because you're probably thinking, well, what kinds of things were supported? Here are some examples, as I said, where the UK was not just active, but a leading partner. Europe Beyond Access programmes supported disabled artists pushing boundaries and creating great creative opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise had. And at the end of it, toolkits were developed and provided for professional development going forward. A programme called Contested Desires, covering 6 countries, addressing shared cultural heritage through international collaboration and knowledge exchange between local artists and communities. Dance Umbrella helped dance performers make new work. Bristol City Circus shared cutting-edge circus performance, and in their words, when they were asked for a quote, because they're still going but without us, maintaining the UK on the map of European touring and exchange was something that came from British membership of that programme. Perennial Biennial established an ongoing partnership between 5 cities of culture, including Liverpool, of course, which we remember, I'm sure, fostering year-on-year research, staff exchanges, and sustainable art practices. And finally, in the domain of arts and culture, I picked out the Key Change programme, which supported underrepresented talents to lead collective actions and create a better, more inclusive music industry for present and future generations, particularly encouraging the inclusion and ability of women musicians to participate. In a recently compiled list of constituencies and what they received from Creative Europe programme, which has been sent to all relevant members of Parliament, including yours here, Islington received over 6 million over a 7-year period for various projects under the Creative Europe programme, not to be sneezed at. I'll say a little word about touring and mobility, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, because it is connected to us being or not part of the programme. In addition, since the end of free movement for touring artists and creative professionals, you've probably heard that they face additional costs and quite shocking administrative burdens, not only for their own mobility, but for the transport of equipment, which must comply with new carnet requirements. Without going into any more details, you can look this up in the European Movements programme Creating Culture Together. They go into great detail for the benefit of the government. The UK Musicians Union has warned that 75% of musicians who previously worked in the European Union have experienced a decline in bookings, while 2025 Best for Britain study found that the number of artists playing in European festivals has fallen quite simply by a quarter since Brexit. So, can we get back some of these rights and privileges we previously enjoyed? There's a political imperative to this. I've been told that Brussels voices, and they've said it to me, inside the European institutions, will be more open to our demands. My organisation is part of a coalition of 200 musical organisations that want to facilitate musicians and performers' abilities to tour more easily. That if we were to show willing to join with our European friends and allies in the many joint cultural endeavours which make up Creative Europe, and of course pay our fair share, our demands would be looked on a lot more favourably. An MEP recently said to me at a reception, we need some reciprocity. So I would argue the case for rejoining is now urgent. According to sources within the European Commission, it's technically possible for us to join from 2027, provided the UK government formally declares its interest as soon as possible. The window is open right now. There is a clear precedent, which I'm sure you've heard about, which is when the UK became an associated country to Horizon Europe, the EU's research and innovation programme at the start of 2024. Britain's scientists basically came together and gave a very, very clear signal to the government we needed to join. Well, a similar arrangement for culture is both achievable and logical. As I've said, many countries outside the EU are also members, like Iceland and Norway. The value of Creative Europe is recognised across the UK nations. The House of Commons Culture, Media and Sport Committee has called on to the UK to join. The Welsh Cabinet, the Scottish Government, the Northern Ireland Assembly, they've all echoed that call. So, let's go dig a little deeper so you're able to understand why it is really important. The programme is a multiplier of creativity. It allows organisations from cultural and creative sectors to pool their resources and create artistic works together. This means developing and distributing cultural and creative works, as I've said, literature, publishing, performing arts, design, architectural, cultural heritage, through to music, film and the audiovisual sector, including partnerships with public service broadcasters such as the BBC and Channel 4 in particular. All of this takes place in areas for which there's neither sufficient interest from the free market nor adequate support from national funding agencies. So it's very much an add-on, it's something extra. And it strengthens artistic freedom and cultural diversity, supports experimentation and pluralism, engages audiences of all ages, and enhances the lives of hundreds of millions of people. And I know I'm being repetitive, but it is also about enhancing mutual understanding across our continent and within our communities, which I think we probably all agree is something we need rather a lot of. The media programme, it's established, it's well known within the sector, but the Brexit terms, which were very harsh, meant that our film industry, which we have to remember is one of our strongest cultural assets, exported more than any other country to the rest of the European continent. And we have lost access to that media programme, which is an integral part of the Creative Europe programme. British filmmakers were big beneficiaries. Ken Loach, Daniel Blake, received $100,000 for development and distribution and went on to win the Cannes Film Festival in 2016. Slumdog Millionaire, The King's Speech, received $750,000 to aid their distribution across 40 countries. 10 British production companies received $600,000 in 2018 alone for the development of film and television and digital projects. Beast, On Chesil Beach and Aardman's Early Man saw their distribution in other EU countries supported through £6 million worth of investment in 2018 as part of a wider $12.5 million awarded to 35 British companies, 42 British cinemas, supporting the distribution of 63 UK films across 40 countries in that 1 year, 2018, just before we left. Channel 4's Walter Presents, I hope you're enjoying it from time to time. Mubi, another wonderful, very diverse film platform and the BFI player also got grants of nearly 2 million to champion European film and television on their platforms. From 2014 to 2019, nearly 10%, I'm going to repeat that, nearly 10% of all cinema admissions and 16% of all European film admissions in the iu3a Cinemas network of thousands of screens across Europe were for British films. That's the Gate in Notting Hill, the Phoenix in Finchley, and I'm presuming also, I don't know it, but you can check whether the cinema here on Islington Green was also part of that network. Media awarded money to the iu3a Cinemas project to support cinemas showing non-national European films across 4,000 screens, and British films did better than anybody else's. In the UK alone, we had 47 UK cinemas with 104 screens who were members during that time. They received about 260,000 for bringing European cinema to their audiences, as well, of course, as our own national films. They spread across 33 towns and cities in the 4 nations. 70% were outside of London. And of course, as I'm sure you're aware, those cinemas are a really important part of the lifeblood and social, as well as cultural infrastructure of the towns that they are in. There were 38 million admissions for British films in this period, right across Europe, with 84% of those admissions reported outside the UK, for films made by us in 2019, for example. The Favourite, Downton Abbey, Yesterday, Rocket Man, and Sorry We Missed You were all in the top 10 across Europe. Whilst many in the TV and film industry would wish us to rejoin the Creative Europe programme and this media programme, which supports training, development, production, distribution of independent film, there seems to be not enough lobbying from the BFI, nor from British Screen and other organisations on the government. I'm going to take a little detour to ask a question. Why might that be the reason? Because this really does affect what gets to be made and what gets to be seen on one of the most important culturally dominant media of the age, which is the screen, big and small. Maybe regulation could be the reason. Regulation refers to legislation which I helped to write when I was an MEP, called the Audiovisual Media Services Directive. We're no longer part of it since Brexit. This requires streaming platforms to make 30% of their catalogues national and European programming. 30%. That has the effect that a lot of people want our programming within their quotas in their countries. Very, very important. There's also a voluntary provision for nation states to put a levy or an investment obligation on streaming platforms like Apple, Netflix, Paramount, etc., insisting they invest more in our local independent film production. The Culture Media Select Committee, after hearing from Peter Kosminski, director of Wolf Hall, has called for such a 5% levy on streaming platforms to go into a national film fund to help our ailing independent filmmakers to make more historical drama, more independent film, and very particularly children's programming. However, streaming platforms have taken court cases across Europe to fight this legislation, which I've been told we would need to sign up to if we wish to join Creative Europe. I'll let that sink in. I'm one of the strongest advocates, along with Peter Kosminski, for this levy, but so is the Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee. But recently we now have renewed and stronger support for joining than ever before. The European movement, supported by the Musicians' Union, the UK-EU Cultural Forum, and the Cultural Exchange Coalition of 200 music organisations, my organisation is a member of all of those, have published a report this June calling for the UK government, quotes, to join Creative Europe, the EU's flagship programme, with a commitment to participate in its successor, which is going to be called Agora EU, which will come on stream late 27 into 28. So rejoining the programme would restore access to funding, networks, cultural, audiovisual co-productions, collaborative opportunities, particularly for independent film and television producers, small and medium-sized enterprises, and emerging talent, with a commitment to joining the successor programme. The Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee said when it wrote about British film and high-end television recently, there is a strong appetite across the film sector for UK to reassociate with Creative Europe. So you heard what I said before, we mustn't allow just a couple of voices maybe to deter us. This could be delivered during the 2026 review of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. That summit to discuss this would have been taking place now. With a change in government, it will take place probably in September. Producer Lord David Putnam and others expressed confidence a request would be welcomed by our EU partners, with a firm recommendation from the Culture, Media, Sport Select Committee, quotes, as part of the review of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement in 2026, the government should seek to rejoin Creative Europe as an associate member. Now, I've mentioned Agora EU. Because of everything that's going on in the world, geopolitical tensions, fake news, a whole range of challenges, the fact it's very hard for our national broadcasters to compete with massive streaming platforms, and citizenship can be undermined by where we're at in terms of social media, etc. A lot you all know about. The European Union has decided to develop a larger programme which will act in favour of culture, media freedom and pluralism, and strengthening civil society. And it will run from the beginning of 28 to 2034. And it merges the existing Creative Europe programme with a programme that's called Citizens, Equality, Rights and Value, bringing culture, media and EU values under one umbrella. And of course, as you know, Greek agora meant an open public space for the exchange and development of ideas. So its general objectives are going to be to promote cultural and linguistic diversity and heritage, increase the competitiveness of the cultural and creative sectors, particularly media and audiovisual industries, safeguard artistic and media freedom, protect and promote equality, active citizenship, rights and values as they are enshrined in treaties and the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU, thereby strengthening democratic participation and resilience in our societies. Most important, it will have a strong focus on media freedom and pluralism. Organisations like the BBC and other public service broadcasters are very likely to be part of programmes to strengthen public service media in the age of fake news and a diminishing public media space where our young people are migrating, 80% of them, by the way, to YouTube and TikTok. Just finally, Creative Europe's budget stands at 380 million, supporting all the sectors I've talked about, but also democracy, the green transition, social and economic resilience. Britain's creative industries are among the most productive in the world. They deserve access to this whole ecosystem. I think cultural ties between us and the whole continent of 40 countries are not somehow a soft afterthought. They're strategic, economic, and foundational to who we are. I think it's time to come back. In a call for tender, the European Commission said the following this year: Creative Europe programme will contribute to the protection of democracy, the green and digital transitions, and the strengthening of social and economic resilience. As I've said, but I think it bears repeating, we can see the relevance of this given the present political, ecological, social and geopolitical situation we find ourselves in. However, there's been little criticism of the UK government decision not to join so far. This contrasts sharply with the UK-EU trade agreement, allowing for the scientists' participation in Horizon and now full membership. We need to change that. One of our most treasured assets is our culture. The UK is home to diverse cultures. Cultures that once, when we were members of the programme, meant that UK cultural projects were a part of 43% of all Creative Europe projects. Everybody did actually want to get together with us. The UK partnered with 1,000 partners in 5 years in 37 different countries. The positive social, cultural, economic and soft power effect of that should not be underestimated. Now various organisations are finding their voice. They are lobbying government hard. I'm proud to be part of that in my capacity as chair of the UK CCD. In the words of the biggest arts cultural NGO across Europe, Culture Action Europe, their Secretary General, Lars Ebert, said, Creative Europe programme is a game changer for cross-border mobility, cooperation and collaboration. We need the UK in. Thank you.